The year 2014 marked a turning point in European history, a stark reminder that the ghosts of the past can resurface with terrifying force. While the world watched Crimea, a silent prelude to a much larger conflict was unfolding in the eastern Ukrainian region of Donbas. This industrial heartland, with its deep historical ties to Russia, became the epicenter of a conflict that would foreshadow Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Donbas, a region rich in coal and steel, was instrumental in the Soviet Union's industrial prowess. After the Soviet collapse in 1991, Donbas became part of an independent Ukraine. However, the region's close ties to Russia, both culturally and economically, remain strong. Many ethnic Russians resided in Donbas, and the region's industries were closely intertwined with Russia's. Pro-European protests erupted in Kyiv, culminating in the Euromaidan Revolution, which ousted the pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych. This upheaval sent ripples of anxiety through Donbas, where many felt a stronger affinity for Moscow than for Kyiv. As the dust settled from the Euromaidan Revolution, a new crisis was brewing in Donbas. Exploiting the existing divisions and anxieties, Russia began to orchestrate a separatist movement in the region. Armed groups, backed by Russian weapons and personnel, seized government buildings in the cities of Donetsk and Luhansk, declaring the establishment of independent people's republics. These self-proclaimed republics, lacking popular support and international recognition, were nothing more than a facade for Russian intervention. The Kremlin's fingerprints were all over the unfolding crisis, from the provision of weapons and training to the deployment of Russian citizens to fight alongside the separatists. The Ukrainian government, caught off guard by the speed and ferocity of the separatist uprising, found itself ill-equipped to respond effectively. Its military, weakened by years of neglect, struggled to contain the well-armed and organized separatists. The conflict quickly escalated into a full-blown war, with both sides engaging in heavy fighting, resulting in a growing number of casualties. From the outset, Russia vehemently denied any involvement in the conflict, dismissing the separatists as concerned citizens acting independently. However, the evidence on the ground told a different story. The separatists were armed with sophisticated Russian weaponry, including tanks, artillery, and advanced anti-aircraft systems that could not have been acquired without direct Russian support. Furthermore, numerous reports emerged of active Russian military personnel fighting alongside the separatists. These little green men, as they came to be known, wore uniforms without insignia, making it difficult to prove their affiliation. Russia's involvement went beyond providing material support. It extended to the information battlefield as well. A relentless propaganda campaign, orchestrated by Russian state-controlled media, flooded the airwaves, portraying the Ukrainian government as fascist and Russophobic. The international community, recognizing Russia's hand in the conflict, imposed sanctions on Russia, targeting individuals and entities deemed responsible for the violence. Conflict in Donbas had morphed into a grinding war of attrition. Gone were the days of large-scale offensive operations. Instead, both sides dug in, establishing elaborate trench systems that stretched for hundreds of kilometers along the front line. Despite the signing of 2 ceasefire agreements in Minsk in 2014 and 2015, fighting continued unabated. Shelling and sniper fire became daily occurrences, claiming the lives of soldiers and civilians alike. The conflict had a devastating impact on the region's infrastructure, with homes, schools, and hospitals reduced to rubble. The war in Donbas took a heavy toll on the Ukrainian military. Forced to confront a well-equipped and experienced enemy, the Ukrainian army suffered significant casualties. However, the conflict also served as a crucible, forcing the Ukrainian military to adapt and modernize. New units, trained and equipped by Western partners, were deployed to the front lines, bolstering Ukraine's defenses. Section 5. The world averted its gaze, international indifference. As the conflict in Donbas dragged on, the world's attention waned. Other crises, such as the rise of ISIS and the Syrian civil war, dominated headlines, pushing the conflict in Ukraine to the back burner. The international community, preoccupied with other pressing issues, seemed content to manage the conflict in Donbas rather than resolve it. The lack of a robust international response emboldened Russia. The Kremlin, sensing weakness and indecision among Western powers, felt free to escalate its involvement in the conflict, confident that it would face no serious consequences. The people of Donbas paid the price for the world's indifference. Trapped in a conflict they did not choose, they endured unimaginable suffering. Their lives were upended by the constant threat of violence, their homes destroyed, their communities torn apart. The international community, by failing to hold Russia accountable for its actions, had abandoned the people of Donbas to their fate. Section 6. Shadows and Lies. Russia's Covert War. While the world focused on the conventional aspects of the conflict, Russia was waging a more insidious war in the shadows. This covert war aimed to undermine Ukrainian sovereignty, sow discord within Ukrainian society, and destabilize the country from within. Russia employed a range of tactics, from cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns to the use of mercenaries and political assassination. One of the most egregious examples of Russia's covert warfare was the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 in July 2014. The aircraft, en route from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, was shot down over eastern Ukraine, killing all 298 people on board. International investigators concluded that the missile that downed the aircraft was a Russian-made Buk missile system, fired from territory controlled by Russian-backed separatists. Despite overwhelming evidence, Russia continues to deny any responsibility for the downing of MH17. The Kremlin has spread numerous conspiracy theories, blaming the Ukrainian government and Western intelligence agencies for the tragedy. Section 7. The Storm Gathers, Escalation and the Road to Invasion. As the conflict in Donbas entered its 8th year, a sense of foreboding settled over Ukraine. Russia, frustrated by its inability to achieve its objectives through covert means, began to escalate its military posture, signaling its intent to resolve the conflict on its own terms. In late 2021 and early 2022, Russia amassed over 100,000 troops along Ukraine's borders, accompanied by tanks, artillery, and other heavy weaponry. This unprecedented military buildup, coupled with increasingly bellicose rhetoric from the Kremlin, left little doubt that Russia was preparing for a major military offensive. Western intelligence agencies, having closely monitored Russia's military movements, issued dire warnings that a full-scale invasion of Ukraine was imminent. The United States and its allies scrambled to provide Ukraine with military aid, including anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons. But it was clear that these measures alone would not be enough to deter a determined Russian onslaught. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, shattering the peace in Europe and plunging the world into a new era of uncertainty. Section 8. Echoes of Donbas, a harbinger of wider conflict. The full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022 did not come out of nowhere. It was the culmination of years of simmering conflict and escalating tensions that had their roots in Donbas. The region, once known for its industrial output, had become a tragic symbol of Russia's imperial ambitions and the human cost of its aggression. The conflict in Donbas served as a testing ground for Russia's hybrid warfare tactics, allowing it to refine its strategies and identify weaknesses in its adversaries. The lessons learned in Donbas would be applied with devastating effect in the wider war against Ukraine. The conflict has shattered the illusion of a post-Cold War peace in Europe, reminding the world that the threat of large-scale interstate conflict remains all too real. The international community must learn from its mistakes and stand united in defense of the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the rule of law.